right now by Director Tochmański, I think it will be perfect.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Pleasure to be here. I want to say, Adam, very impressive presentation, always very structured, and it is quite noteworthy, how much you guys actually do and the kinds of leapfrogs you've done. I think I mentioned to you when we spoke, I've been following the Polish market for quite some time, especially from the Visa perspective. When I was at Visa for a number of years, when you guys did something that at Visa we called the big idea, when you created a big pool of funds to move the country to acceptance, and said, well, if we're doing that, why don't we just go straight to contactless? And that really put you guys at the forefront. Also, I think very noteworthy the way your multiple RTGS platforms work. To the question, I'll answer briefly, and then maybe I'll go through a few quick slides that I put together to give you guys some structure around what the Israel market looks like. The impact on the consumer from a payments perspective has been most significant, or the innovative impact has been most significant, I would say, in the last 6 months, believe it or not, because we did do a kind of leapfrog of our own. There was a long Bank of Israel reform, which basically, after lots of internal discussions, and before my time at the Bank of Israel, and Ilanit Madmoni is here with us, and she can say more later. After a lot of discussions, the Bank of Israel required the acquirers to require the merchants to upgrade their terminals to be EMV compliant, but similar to Poland, by the time we're doing EMV, although it's many years after Poland, NFC is already part of the technology. So the upgrade to EMV also included an upgrade to NFC. We're in the throes of that process. A little bit less than half the terminals have migrated. This is all in the last year. And when the technology players understood this was happening, we saw a revolution. We have, I think it's 7 digital apps that have launched in the last 6 months. Digital wallets. And by digital wallet, I mean an app that has NFC as a payment method, so you can put your phone next to the terminal and tap and pay. That comes on the heels of all the contactless cards, or all the payment cards, or 80% of the payment cards having migrated to be EMV and NFC compliant. And when that happened, everyone in the industry realized, okay, there's an opportunity here. And we recently had one major big tech multinational launch their wallet, and literally in a few days got hundreds of thousands of users, or a few weeks, I should say. And now there's another big tech that's talking about launching. So that I would say is the most noteworthy. And prior to that, for a few years, we had person-to-person payment apps launched by the banks. One of them significant, over 2 million users in a country of 9 million people. It's huge. And that was riding the rails of ACH and payment cards. So when an individual made a payment to another individual, the payer's credit card or other payment card was charged, and the payee's bank account was credited through an ACH. That continues. So those are the, and you'd be wants to find an Israeli who doesn't use one of these P2P platforms. So those are the 2 most significant ones. But that's just to answer your question directly. Maybe just take you through a few slides. We put something together very quickly, just as really a reference for discussion. I don't know how to share on Zoom, believe it or not, because we don't use Zoom at the Bank of Israel. What should I be clicking?
Share screen at the bottom of the screen.
There it is.
Yep.
This is embarrassing. I used to use Zoom so much. Here we go. Okay, do you see it?
Yes, go on.
Excellent. Right. So just a quick overview. So we have 5 critical payment systems that we supervise at the Bank of Israel. Maybe a word about the way we're structured. In some markets, the central bank includes a body that supervises banks. In other markets, that body is separate from the central bank. in Israel, the Bank of Israel does have a major and dominant and influential body called the Supervisor of Banks, and Ilanit is from that division, and they also have an innovation division, which has been leading many of the local initiatives. And separate to that, I think most central banks have a body that supervises payment systems as well as operates the RTGS system, and that's the group that I head. Just to give you some sense, because there are two of us from the Bank of Israel on the call. So in terms of critical payment systems that we supervise, we have the national RTGS system, which we also operate. All the clearinghouses also settle through our RTGS system. So, I like to say, and I think it's true for all central banks, that the fact that we operate a payment system gives us an understanding and insight into the challenges in terms of stability and to some degree also efficiency that we require of all the external payment systems, because we literally operate it ourselves. We have shifts, we have night shifts, day shifts, we have errors, we have crises that we manage just like every other payment system, and it is upon us to make sure that everything runs smoothly and nothing stops. We have cybersecurity requirements, everything that applies to other payment systems. So we not only supervise, we also actually operate ourselves. And I think that's a very interesting combination for a regulator. We also operate, and this is probably more unique to Israel, as a central bank, we also operate our own check clearinghouse. We do continue to have paper checks in significant volumes. And so we also lead reforms with respect to checks, but we also operate the check clearinghouse. ABS is automated banking systems, or Shva in Hebrew. Anyway, it's the national payment system for all payment cards. We're at 350 billion about euros a year. Shekels, divide by 4 for the euro number. But I should say the penetration of electronic payments into private consumer expenditure is quite high. We're definitely in the top layer of markets where people are using cards as well as other forms of electronic payments for almost everything. And if you take housing out of the equation, we really are one of the top markets. And that's interesting because in terms of reforms and innovation, we're playing a little bit of catch up. And yet still the penetration is quite high. And maybe I'll say a word about that. I think that results from a significant level of innovation, which was domestic until a few years ago. So not much alignment between Israel and what was happening in other markets, but the, let's call it the startup nation frame of mind, the innovation at the point of sale, the innovation at a central a payment system that impacted the point of sale at every single merchant, enabled us to bring value-added services to the consumer and to small businesses and to large businesses that weren't available anywhere. Like people are launching installment plans now around the world as kind of like a big thing. Buy now, pay later. We've been doing that for 30 years at every point of sale, and lots of other features, multi-merchant loyalty programs, redeemable at the point of sale, all kinds of things that have become buzzwords in the last few years. We did locally with a very domestic app through our domestic payment system. Masav is the national ACH clearinghouse. Actually, the ABS and Masav were owned by the same banks and operated by the same management. And we are now going through a process of separating the two, which we believe will give birth to lots of additional innovations, because one group will be more minded towards account to account and the other will be more minded towards payment cards. And we also have a national ATM network, which is actually also operated by ABS, which we supervise. And that is part of the payment experience. People do still use cash and need to use ATMs. The participants in all of these payment systems are still banks and two non-bank entities, which are credit card companies. But even those entities were subsidiaries of the banks that were spun out by regulation. So a few years ago, we had a national reform looking to increase competition in the financial sector, namely in banking and cards. And so 2 of 3 national credit card companies were spun out. When I say credit card companies, they act as issuers, issuer processors, and acquirers. And so they also tend to participate in the payment systems. However, we don't have additional non-banks, and that is something we're working on. We have one credit union who received their initial license from another regulator who will be wanting to connect to the payment systems shortly. And I'll say a few words about other types of non-bank PSPs that are interested in joining. I mentioned earlier, the innovations in P2P apps have been significant. Card on file payment apps have taken off not only in P2P, so parking, retailers, loyalty programs, fuel chains. I've got a favorite app of mine in fuel chain where I pay with a barcode, honestly. It's a combination of a barcode and a few other things and get cash back at the end. So lots of these type of homegrown local types of apps. We had 3 significant mass transit apps launched recently using the QR code. So lots with card on file or credentials on file. And it's become a bit too fragmented, the customer experience to our taste as a regulator. And yet, the innovation continues. I mentioned the fact that as a regulator, we required the market to migrate to EMV and NFC. I will say that the reason we did not migrate earlier was not that we didn't have terminals. In Poland, I know that acceptance was an issue. Merchants just weren't accepting cards and didn't have terminals. And so when they deployed terminals, went ahead and deployed NFC and EMV compliant terminals. Here we had magnetic stripe terminals with very high levels of penetration. And the reason that we didn't migrate to EMV was actually a good reason. We had no fraud issues. Our fraud levels were so low, they were lower than EMV markets in Europe. And why is that? Well, I mentioned earlier that we had all kinds of domestic innovations. We had a piece of a software kernel embedded in every single terminal in the country, which was developed and updated almost daily by our national payment system that manages the payment cards. And so there was no need for EMV from a fraud perspective. And yet what happened was that worldwide, we saw that EMV became a platform for innovation because it was no longer just about the chip in the card. Issuers began to attach an NFC antenna to the card and then enabled payment by tap. And then you take that chip and small little antenna and put it in the chipset in the mobile phone. And suddenly you can connect it to a digital wallet and provide all kinds of additional offerings to the user. And suddenly we were stuck behind. So whereas we were ahead of the world with all our innovations at the point of sale, suddenly we weren't able to align. And certainly global players weren't able to come locally. And that was something we addressed as a regulator. And now that we're doing the upgrade, as I mentioned earlier, it's just been incredible, the number of new digital wallets coming to market. Faster payments is an innovation that I can say happened, but has not yet succeeded. All the banks have connected. It's operated by the ACH National Clearinghouse called Masav, but the penetration is still nowhere near where we'd like it to be. Challenges that we see nationally as a regulator. So I mentioned adding non-banks to the payment systems. PSPs or fintechs that are not currently regulated have a challenge because they don't have any way to get licensed. We've been trying to pass a law, which is kind of like a version of the PSD, which would license these entities. We have some national political challenges that it's kind of difficult to pass laws in the last couple of years, but we believe that will be solved shortly. And then there will be a regulator that will be able to give fintechs licenses to either move money or hold money and move it. And then it will be easier to give them direct access to the payment systems. And then another kind of national challenge that I would note is attracting fintechs and big techs to the local market just as a concept. And when I say fintechs, I include the large Israeli fintechs active in the payment space, they often don't view Israel as a market because it's too small, because the language is different, and because there is a regulatory burden that they have a hard time justifying when they can spend their regulatory efforts on larger markets. So these are all issues that we're addressing, and we'd really like to see more activity by non-banks in the local market. And as the payment systems regulator, I'd like to find a way to help them connect to our payment systems. Another big challenge is growing volumes on the faster payments network. And then another one that we think about, and we actually published a paper a week ago, which is really a call for information, and that is CBDC, central bank digital currency. So we're thinking about issuing a digital shekel as a central bank. Lots of questions around that, anywhere from what kind of technology should we use? Is blockchain really necessary, or any other form of distributed ledger? To is this really necessary? We have very good working payment systems which are stable. You know, if it's not broken, why do we need to fix it? And then all the way to monetary policy. What kind of impact will it have on monetary policy, and what kind of impact will result if we do nothing in terms of digital currencies, because we do see other digital currencies coming to market globally, not all being backed by fiat currencies. So this is another huge question that we're looking at. We've been looking at it for a few years. We've kind of taken a step up now and actually published the skeleton, or the initial features that we're thinking about as a potential way forward with CBDCs, even though we haven't made any decisions yet about whether we think we're actually going to go forward. So if anybody on the line is interested in more, look on our website or contact us, and we will be happy to send you a link. There's a paper kind of giving a lot of information about that, as well as a description of the architecture, or the features at least, not the architecture, and a call for information. So if you have anything you believe you can add to our thinking, we would only welcome it. That's just kind of like quickly in a few words. Hope that provides some good oversight. I do want to say I see great promise in the fintech space, both for national economies and for international cooperation. We track what happens in high tech in Israel. The high tech sector leads economic growth. And one thing that we saw really in recent quarters is that the capital raised by the fintech space has now moved into first place. So if you look back 1 or 2 quarters, the categories in high tech, there's biotech, there's ed tech, there's ag tech. So cybersecurity was raising the most money because Israel is truly a global center in cybersecurity. And for the first time in the last quarter or 2 quarters, the amount of money raised by fintechs has now circumvented even cybersecurity and is in first place. So we're very glad to be in a market with a population of fintechs, including some of the guys that are going to present here, a group of companies that actually make international impact and bring value everywhere. And we really plan to try harder and work with you to bring some of these value offerings to the local market as well, not just have them developed here as R&D centers. Thank you.
That it was very, very interesting overview on the Israeli ecosystem and payment systems. We are very happy that you joined us. Of course, if someone would like to, from the attendees, if someone would like to ask questions, please write them on the chat. I will be more than happy to read them and ask our experts to answer them. Now I would like to move to.
I just want to apologize. At the end of the panel, I will need to go to another engagement, but that's not.
We can always.
I really want to know what see some of these pitches, and I have another member of my team who's going to watch and brief me.
Yes, we will have Ilanit from Bank of Israel with us till the end of the webinar. So I presume that if anyone will have questions regarding Bank of Israel, she'll be more than happy to answer. Now I would like to move to Mr. Dariusz Mazurkiewicz, President of BLIK. something that is very unique. One of the most interesting achievements in the financial sector is BLIK. BLIK, the Polish mobile payment standard that transformed the face of Polish mobile banking. And so far, over 10 million people decided to use it. So 10 million is more than whole Israel. It shows how BLIK successful is. And BLIK is a team of experts who have participated in the creation and implementation of innovative cashless payment programs, online payments, and projects more broadly related to the electronic and mobile banking. And my question is, what is so unique and special about the BLIK compared to other countries? I mean, why BLIK is so successful, and how the idea of BLIK and implementation of it might be an example for Israel. How was possible to create such successful solution?
Okay. Thank you very much for this great introduction. And my name is Dariusz Mazurkiewicz, as you introduced me. First of all, I would like to say that I'm really happy to share on BLIK during this prominent and really, I would say, vibrant discussion. As you saw in the presentation of Mr. Tochmański, BLIK is really participating in the, I would say, national payment system in a very important way. But your question is really interesting, and I think what I would like to tell you right now is a little bit about the background of BLIK. What was the great idea? What was the big idea of creating BLIK? Like already 6 years ago. It was 2015, actually February, when we launched, and we launched our platform, our payment system, and later on our payment scheme, as you saw in the presentation of Mr. Tochmański. We launched our platform with 6 largest, biggest Polish banks based on their mobile solution that they were already offering to the customers. The big idea of BLIK was to create a common payment platform, payment system, in a very strong and very close cooperation within banks, but nevertheless based in a completely separate company. Very small, agile, dynamic company, disposing of enough technology, capital, and really big support from banks, and to act very, very quickly. And the big idea at the very beginning was not to wait until the big techs, global techs come to Poland and they start offering the solutions to their customers. Banks really wanted to play the crucial and important leadership role in the payment segment. And of course, the big initial idea of banks, and here just to mention that the first bank just initiating was PKO BP, the biggest one in Poland, inviting the other 5 CEOs to the same table. And for them, it was clear that we need to work, we need to act, we need to hurry. And we want to have something belonging to the Polish banking sector. We don't want to wait for Google and Apple and the other big players coming over to Poland sooner or later. We want to be ready for them. And actually, the last 6 years, we were working very hard with all of these banks, and not only banks, but all participants of payment landscape, payment market in Poland. So I mean all Polish PSPs, also those who provide ATM networks, those who are acquirers on a daily basis, and of course, those who are payment services providers providing their solutions to e-commerce, Polish e-commerce. So we were struggling and hurrying up just to build as quickly as possible the acceptance network. Within 2 or I would say 3 years' time, we completed our acceptance network, let's say, task, because we were present with our solution everywhere. And of course, we were upgrading at the same time our solution within mobile banking applications. So Polish bank started just to offer BLIK in a very prominent position in the mobile bank, in mobile apps. And step by step, we were upgrading our, I would say, strategy with our central marketing approach as well. So BLIK, until today, is really managing, is really providing the central and, I would say, synchronized marketing communication to the market. So this is very important with our own brand BLIK. And the big result of our, I would say, big consensual approach from the banking sector, the big result is that today BLIK is the most prominent brand in payments in Poland, exceeding, let's say, global giants. So this is #1 payments brand right now in Poland. BLIK is, we are calculating that even 70% of Polish e-commerce is processed with BLIK solution today. So the love brand of BLIK is used by Polish people and the Polish users, the customers of Polish banks using the mobile banking solution for e-commerce payments. It's really hard job for cards today to be to find themselves in the e-commerce sector at least. So e-commerce belongs to BLIK and Polish banks. And our dream has always been to be present in POS as well. We were, for the last 5 years, we were preparing our contactless, let's say, technology. And very soon, within coming weeks, we'll be launching, so this is also very probably interesting for you, we'll be launching our contactless solution in a strong cooperation with Mastercard, who became, during last years, also a minority shareholder of our company. So to answer your question, the big success of BLIK in the Polish market, in my opinion, is a great result of cooperation, of finding synergies between parties of the whole sector, and banks, and the real vision of the, I would say, the founders, the founding banks from 2013, 2014, when the company was being created at that time, was to be independent, was not to compete within payments, but to cooperate within payments. And just to mention that the great support of our regulator, who is Narodowy Bank Polski, was absolutely important, let's say, is absolutely important partner in our growth, because this big business idea launched by 6 Polish CEOs 6 years ago was really, to be honest, was really very nicely accompanied with NBP on a daily basis. I also wanted to tell you that our strategy was always to cooperate. We are cooperating as well with our clearinghouse, KIR, because the solution for P2P payments, and this is the area in which we are very active as well, based on bank accounts, just using a mobile phone to transfer money in an instant way. It's also a great example of cooperation between Polish ACH, who is KIR, and Narodowy Bank Polski, because the synchronized strategic approach to bring this really interesting product to the market was seems to be really successful, because this is the last, let's say, product that is absolutely right now growing in very exponential, let's say, with exponential figures. If you have questions, I'm really open to answer all of them, but please remember that this is, as BLIK is a story about cooperation, consensus, and bringing all players of payments to the same table. And this is the reason why we are so successful in our country.
Thank you very much. It was pretty interesting, because usually when I hear about BLIK, it's like what I can find on the website. You showed a little bit background, and indeed the cooperation here is the big word, and it worked. If there will be any questions, I will forward you. I can see that there is question to Mr. Salomy, but he had to leave us for a few minutes. So maybe we can ask this question later. And maybe we can, because we are a little bit behind of schedule.
I'm actually still here for a couple minutes. You wanna?
Okay, so maybe let's do it this way. Because we are a little bit behind the schedule, I will ask May Mikkelson from GK8 to give the pitch, and maybe then we can jump to the question to Oded. Because May has to run for another meeting where she's really needed. So maybe
or maybe just Ilanit can field the question, because I will go in a minute. So
okay,
thank you.
So Ilanit also will be available for this question, and now we can move to the presentations.
So thank you, Kate, and it's a pleasure being here. I'm 100% Polish, so it's even a greater pleasure. I'm working for GK8. GK8 is an Israeli cybersecurity company. What we do is that we partner with leading financial institutions, banks, custodians, exchange, traditional banking in space of investment, provide them a full end-to-end platform that enable the financial institution to join into the space of digital assets, offer digital asset custody, trading, lending, or any type of financial institution, while we're taking care of the most, I would say, important issue when it comes to digital assets, the building block to any type of digital asset offering, which is the custody. So what we do is, as I mentioned, provide a full end-to-end solution that enable the financial institution to join into that space, provide them all the components they need. It's a standalone platform that is wrapped by API and SDK that can just integrate to the bank business logic. And then on top of it, the bank can start offering any type of financial service that they want on top of any type of digital assets. Whether the bank wants to start offering cryptocurrency offering, security tokens, equities, support for central bank digital currency, tokenizations of assets. And by the way, GK8 also offers the highest insurance in the market today. So any banks who would go live with GK8 will be insured by ION, the insurance by Lloyd's of London, with the highest insurance policy. Just a little bit about GK8, so we know who we are. We're a team of cybersecurity experts. The founding team used to serve an elite cybersecurity unit under the direct command of the Israel Prime Minister office. We are backed by Sumitomo Corporation, one of the biggest banks in Japan, the founder of Checkpoint, maybe one of the most successful cybersecurity companies that came out of Israel. So their co-founder is the lead investor in the company. We got 7 unique patents on our technology. And Professor Eran Trumer, the co-founder of Zcash, they call him the cryptography ninja in the crypto space, is also a very active team member in the company. We're working today with leading players such as eToro, who are managing all their assets with us. Prosegur is a traditional custodian for traditional banks, managing in fiat money 440 billion US dollars asset under management, just went live with digital asset offering. They're offering custody as a service for traditional banks, and they're doing it with us. So what is GK8? What's so important? Why we constantly hear about more and more hacking events when it comes to the digital asset space? Why is it so important to protect it? So the most important thing you need to know when you're dealing with blockchain-based assets is that blockchain transactions are very different than regular fiat transaction that we know. If I want to send a transaction today from me to Kate, I can just create a banking transaction and send it. Well, blockchain-based transactions do not work this way. If I want to send Kate now 100 Bitcoin or just 1 Bitcoin, the transaction structure will be my to Kate 1 Bitcoin. But then there's another field of information, a mandatory field of information, that every time that I basically create a new blockchain transaction, any type of blockchain transaction on any type of asset, I need to request for that most updated field of data. Then I get it, put it in the structure of my transaction, and only then I can actually sign on that transaction and send it to the blockchain. What does that mean? It means that any type of solution today that's supposed to protect you is connected to the internet at some point. As we know, every solution that is connected to the internet can get hacked. That's a fact. And this is why also we constantly hear about more and more hacking events that are happening, because the solutions today are basically connected to the internet, exposed to cybersecurity attack vectors, and hackers are finding very creative way to exploit it. While the markets continue going up, the hackers are becoming more and more incentivized. What is so unique about GK8 is that we are the only solution in the market today that offers financial institutions a true cold solution to manage the majority of their assets, to manage their treasury. We're the only solution in the market today who offers in the end-to-end platform a combination of a very unique cold vault for treasury management combined with a very unique hot wallet for day-to-day activity for high-frequency transaction. So if I'm zooming in on the cold component of the solution, we're the only solution today in the market that in the cold layer never receive data in order to create valid transaction, so never get any data. It's completely offline. You log in as a bank employee, you create a very sensitive transaction, you sign on it offline, and you only output already signed transaction. Now, of course, the cold is meant for custodian management. Usually you will not even touch it. It means it's kind of like your underground bunker to manage the majority of the bank digital assets, while all the day-to-day activity happening with a hot wallet called hot because it's all the time connected to the internet. So using the GK8 end-to-end platform, we become the bank customer. We're just connecting to the business logic of the bank. As the customer of the bank, I go to my app. Hey, Mai, do you want to open a digital asset account with us? Yes, I do. The mobile app using API will communicate with our hot wallet and will get for me my unique deposit address. And of course, you're keeping me for the assets in your storage department, which is GK8 platform. So I get my deposit address. The platform is wrapped by API, so we can also connect to liquidity providers. Hey, Mai, do you want to buy cryptocurrency with us? Yes, I do. Everything happened within the interface of the bank. Hey, Mai, do you want to earn interest on your funds? Yes, I do. In the digital asset economy, there is something called DeFi staking, the ability to earn interest on the fund you are custodying. So GK8 also support that. So what we do at high level is that we basically serve as the building block layer, the custody layer that enables you to offer custody of digital assets for your clients. And in addition to custody, as I mentioned, we support staking, DeFi, the ability to earn interest on the funds you're custodying, token creation. For example, a company come to you, tokenize the shares of my company. So you as a bank can basically tokenize those assets, create a smart contract that represent those shares, then offer custody, and then also offer the minting, creation of more token and burning directly from the GK8 platform. I'm happy to share more and more information. This is my email. Feel free to reach out to me. Happy to share with you and send you more data. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, May. I would like to ask Tenurex to start the pitching. We are a little bit behind the schedule, but each company has 6 minutes to present their solution. Of course, after the event, we will share with participants and registrants the link to the video and all of the presentations. And then, of course, we'll be more than happy if you have more questions, specific questions to the companies to facilitate the contact. Ishar, you may start your presentation.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. I think I was not prepared to be after May because it's always a bit tough to compete with her, but I'll try my best. Hi, everybody. My name is Ishar Alieli. I'm the CEO of Tenurex. Let me share with you my presentation and we could start. Give me 1 second. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
So first, it's a pleasure to be part of this program and talk with the Polish market. This is one of the most interesting markets in the EU today and a big target for us. What we're doing in TenorX is that we're creating a corresponding banking as a service platform. We're building a platform that facilitates the creation of relationships between financial institutions and enables them to send wire transfers without the risk that is implied from this operation. Our goal is to allow FI's customers to connect and streamline their relationship with their current and future banking partners over a reliable and controlled network, using data first, the same as it works in the credit card operations. Who we are as a team, we're 4 serial entrepreneurs building fintechs, banks, and financial institutions in the past 20 years. So what is our value proposition? We're giving you the ability to control over current and future transfer flows and the creation and operation of relationships with other financial institutions in a smooth, frictionless manner, and of course, reducing enormously the risk. So let's see a bit of the market context. In today's world, we witness the hyper growth of fintechs and digital banking as a developing operational model. This creates a multi-layer banking services. In simple words, an FI is sourcing banking services from another FI that is also sourcing services from another one. After talking with over 350 domain experts in the past year, fintechs and banks, we identified these 3 challenges. First is the onboarding of a new FI, which takes a long time, it's full of risk, and it's very expensive. The second is the operations of this service. And lastly, the lack of growth. The problems of these challenges that are creating is that there is no one single view to all parties and all stakeholders involved in a transaction. All decisions are made post factum based on old and late to arrive data. And these relationships are trust-based between institutions, and therefore they're being manipulated and of course, very problematic to create. So what is our solution? We take the institutional level relationship and we're breaking it down to the core unit of one single transaction. Then we take the wire and we provide it with a structure, meaning we give a very detailed X-ray view on each transaction, which we call KYT, Know Your Transaction process. This allows a unified view to all parties that are involved. Then we allow the parties to pre-approve or pre-decline every transaction through a simple to use, very elegant process. This allows an external vetting layer loaded with data and before it was actually being executed on the wire and consuming the responsibility and accountability on it. Lastly, we're doing this in a machine-to-machine programmatic level. This introduced a new level of control and management without the need of institutional-based relationship or any trust at all. Our offering based on two elegant to use, 3-step protocols, 2 elegant APIs, and 3 steps protocols. The first one is the smart wire. The smart wire gives a granular view on each transaction that enables one unified view to all players in the flow. The call wire, the second API, is managing the relationship based on unified data and a programmatic actions executed by machines and at scale. So this is how it works. We're connecting to the payment page, and from there on, we are only asking the financial institution to put his ledger on hold. That's it. From here, we're taking the transaction, we validate and enrich the data, answering 450 compliance questions. Then we assess and vet the transaction, and then we match it to the right transfer. After that, we give the other side, the correspondent side, the ability to capture this transaction the same like you have in cards. This is based only on data, and therefore it doesn't create any risk for both sides. When the other side, the correspondent side, is capturing the transaction, this is where we give you the name of the bank that wants to process the transaction, and the respondent side is moving the same like he did before. And therefore, we do not change any of the operations or methodology. We do not change the compliance or risk-based approach. We do that without almost any integration. And we're an extended vetting layer that creates a new process that enables you to transfer the decision on consuming a transaction before the responsibility taking based only on data. If you're a regulated fintech, a PSP, an MSB, or an EMI, if you're a small or a medium bank and you want to create more revenues, build a strong corresponding business and service your clients with much more currencies, and do it all without any change to your operations or any IT addings, we are here to help you. So what we're giving you is the following benefits. Of course, smoother operations without a lot of noise. We reduce the 5 different risks you have: the operational risk, the compliance risk, the AML, KYC risk, the reputational risk, and of course, the liquidity risk. We're enabling you to do and bring much more business and grow your business as an FI or as a bank by yourself. So as I said, with one onboarding to our platform, you can find many different financial institutions to partner with. With our quality know your transaction enriched assessment, you have the ability to take decisions without consuming the risk. We're lowering your costs immediately and reducing flagged transactions. And we're doing this with less resources and giving you simple actions per transaction instead of a very complicated, cumbersome processes. This we do with minimal to none integration, without any additional costs, without changing your operations or payment routes, and without changing the risk appetite or your compliance process. We're here to find more partners, and we just opened our waiting list for new FIs to join in new banks, and we would love to have you as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Isar. Now I would like to invite Pablo from Correlata to show us their technology.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And one more remark, you will have 6 minutes.
Yeah.
We are behind the schedule, so I would
no
like
problem.
to
So do you hear me, right?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good. So thank you very much again for the opportunity. My name is Pablo Hornstein from Correlata, and I will share my screen. So I will be able to start the presentation. I hope that you see the presentation. Yeah, you see the presentation?
Yes, we can see.
Good, good. So the main area for Correlata is focusing on data center intelligence. And the main area that we are connected to the fintech is where we are seeing the applications that are running for this segment based on the IT that is mostly critical for the companies. So we believe that we are in an area that business continuity, mainly for the critical systems like the payments systems, are crucial for those organizations. So the Correlata is mainly a solution that is focusing on business areas, but the main focus is on the underlying IT systems that are providing the baselines or the payments and other critical solutions. So the main point is to analyze the IT underlying solutions, so we can be sure that the applications that are running on top of the IT is efficient, with no risks, and with minimal costs. So where we are helping the companies, we are looking, or where companies are looking to reduce their cost, provide more efficiency, identify their SLAs and be able to match the SLAs and so on. So that there are a long list of benefits that we are providing, or we can help with customers. The challenge is where a lot of hands and roles are changing the IT underlying solutions, so they may impact how the service are provided to the customer. The second point is where there are a lot of hidden risks in data recovery, in high availability, a lot of risks that they are not seen in a daily basis. And there is a need of analysis to make sure that we can expose those hidden risks. And the last but not least is a lot of policies and regulations that the organization must be applied to. And we would like, or the customer is a must to make sure that they understand how their IT is aligned to those regulations. So the solution is based on the analytics in three main areas. The first one, to understand the efficiency of the IT systems that are the baselines of the application. Second one is the cost, to understand whether they need to reduce, how they can reduce their cost. And the third one is to identify and expose a hidden risk before they have negative impact to their business. So in our times with COVID-19, when we have to find out how we can minimize our costs, and we have human issues with isolation and how we can bring experts and so on to identify all those issues, we are proposing an automated analytic solution so we can run in a frequency base, so we can identify those issues and reducing cost, increasing efficiency, and highlight the risks without intervening of other experts in the market. So what makes us unique? The main area is that you see that we have an applications on top that are checking the interrelated issues between all the IT topics. So this is not just to focus on a specific layer, but to understand the relationship so we can build the topology and then analyze how the IT is providing value, risks, and efficiency to applications. That can be the billing application, for instance, and it can be any application that is critical to the customer. So the vision of Correlata is to change the way organizations are seeing the huge investments and the risks that the IT systems are providing to the organization, so we can understand the impact of these investments to the business. And the second one, the mission, is to make sure that we are challenging the data center management to find out new areas in order to find out how their investments are providing value to the organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pablo. So now it's time for BI. Asaf, you may start your pitching session. It's 6 minutes. And Pablo, if you can stop sharing your... Yep. Okay, good.
Hello, everybody. My name is Asaf Binstock. I'm the CEO of BI. And making sure you see my screen now.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, great. So let us start with the future of risk modeling. Well, financial institutions, and talking about this day, and thank you for having me, the Polish market, the Israeli market, and the global market is facing risk, especially credit risk related, in many fronts. And the fintechs that are now penetrating the market behave very differently from the banks. I know banks are here in the audience, but maybe not necessarily only. And I think that the banks that will prevail are the banks who will act like insurtechs and fintechs. So I welcome you banks to think of the future of risk. And let me show you how it's done in fintechs and banks throughout the world that have used our software. So the problem is that there's a lot of disruption in credit provisioning, in digital banking, in insurance space. And the disruption is enabled by much technology and a lot of data. The new channels, the mobile, the automatic decisioning has made regulation to follow and change behavior. AI is more acceptable and will be the dominant force in decisioning in automatics in the next 5 years. Therefore, banks are about to be disrupted. And we are suggesting a new schema of the way to conduct risk analytics. The solution in green today is where customer onboarding or campaigns to sell more credit products, whatever, in banking, is requesting data and decisioning from either manual or legacy solutions. Risk policies, business rules, and statistical models, all of that needs to come and play where you want to get to the decision and originate a product. Where we see the data comes from the customary, orthodox CRM, data warehouse, ERP, we also see many new data hubs like web APIs, open banking, and different third-party partnerships that allows a bank or a fintech to have much more data on its customers. The risk backbone needs to make all of the decisioning. The problem, and what I can guarantee to 90% of the audience here, is in your organization, you're either self-developing a very complex code in order to try and have the best of breed solutions that you invented, the same way as 100 other banks in the world try to invent the wheel, or that you are currently using 3 to 7 different partially integrated systems in order to make order of this entire mambo jumbo. What we think your loan origination or your product origination decisioning needs is one platform to take care of this entire thing in a very streamlined, accurate, data comprehensive, and clear answering regulations way. We introduced the Iron Risk platform, which we embedded in North America, Latin America, East Asia, Israel, of course, and we're looking at Poland actually as a very relevant and dominant market to enter East Europe, because we've seen a lot of innovation in the payments as we see today. And we see that this need requires underwriting in a fast-paced, automatic rhythm and ability to scale as current decisioning system fail to do. Where we see ourselves assisting is that we cater one platform. It's designed for the entire risk process, and so it's significant cost saving. It's an end-to-end platform, so it's fully auditable, and everything has a backlog that says exactly what was done in the risk process and also in the generating of loans, etc. process. We see it much simpler, and like a customer just 2 weeks ago told me, it would have taken us 6 months just to develop what you've embedded in the first hour of implementation. So we see that and the ability to agile build and reiterate with risk models, an ability to fast forward your ability to play in the game where global .com companies, global tech giants, and fintechs are now winning. And last but not least, the ability to have a continuously improvement in your models, not a stagnant situation with a lot of automations, a lot of algorithmic, and a lot of new data introduced, assist the issue. McKinsey are saying to us as a partner that by 25, there's not going to be any more risk that is done in the orthodox way. And we're probably going to see the risk people in the organization take much broader space, more human capital, and more infrastructure. And so one of our partners, the former CEO of Bank has said, the fact that the analysts take a cumbersome multi-step risk process and make it very easy, simple to use, makes it the robust thing that it is. And so it's compliant. It designs specifically to boost your models, but not take the control of them. It allows any customizable aspect. So the bank or the fintech controls the intellectual property of your modeling. And it has an enhanced monitoring and decision engine that allows you basically to control and utilize new data, new APIs, all the advanced technology, but in the same environment that you once upon a while did risk with legacy or self-developed code. Be very happy to contact you and to get your feedbacks on the requirements of risk analytics in your organization. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Asaf. Now presentation by Open Legacy. We have 15 minutes delay. So the second panel will start around 11:45 Polish time. 15 minutes is still less than average Polish train, so I think we can manage. Gil, the floor is yours. You have 6 minutes.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, and I'll try to keep it short and to the point. So who's Open Legacy? Open Legacy basically is an innovative platform that enables customers to actually expose their business logic and data from their monolithic solution and to be able to do it in a modern way. We've been in business for the last 7, almost 8 years now. As you can see on the top right side, we are serving quite a lot of the tier 1 and tier 2 financial organizations, both banks and insurance, but we also serving other sectors. In Poland specifically, we have, for example, Liberty Global, UPC, which probably a lot of you know. We are present, as I said, globally, and one thing, we've been growing quite fast in the last few years, especially last year where everybody understood the urgency around having all of their services available as digital services. But one of the things that we are really proud of is our ability to retain our clients, even though we do not have a technical or commercial vendor lock-in. As you can see here, this is just a selected group of both customers or partners that we help them in accelerating and simplifying the whole digital transformation. So basically, what do we do? I mean, we are taking a completely different and innovative approach to expose the business logic and the data from the different legacy systems. Still, I think based on the last statistics, more than 90% of the banks are still running on core legacy solutions. So we have experience working with a lot of different types of solution, all the way from the mainframe, AS400, databases, SAP, Oracle. The more complex and difficult it is, the more value we add. One of the key principles of Open Legacy is that we never ask you to make any changes on your side, on the core application. And we know how to actually read the metadata on the core application and automatically generate now modern services that can be serving all the different digital channels. In a nutshell, what we do, which is different than other middleware solutions or approaches that I'm sure you've seen, is one, we are actually automating the access to the core applications, to the legacy system. And as I said, we have experience with a lot of them. This is, again, one of the strength points. Second, we are helping you with standardizing and reusing a lot of these components that we generate. So we provide you with the asset repository and predefined solution center. We have more than 70 people in R&D sitting and working to make sure that we support all the latest technologies, all the way from Kafka and from different deployment models and so on. From a design capabilities, we provide today both no-code and low-code options, but we still have a lot of clients that want a full code option so they can completely adjust the code that we generate and can do it whatever they want. The APIs can be today in Europe, especially with PSD2 and the open banking and buy-in. We have a lot of customers that want us to actually implement the APIs based on the standardizations that they selected. We can work in a contract first approach, which is helping to simplify and decouple the whole process. As I mentioned at the beginning, I mean, we do not, one of the things that we took from day one is really one of the biggest challenges with a lot of middleware solution is that a lot of them do what they're supposed to do, but then you are completely locked with the way they are working. If you want to change, you are being forced to upgrade everything that you are, all the APIs that you are developing, you have to run them on their proprietary environment. On Open Legacy, we are focusing only on the design time. We do not have our own proprietary runtime, and you can run it wherever you want. Last point, which is also related to the previous one, is to make sure that we, from a commercial model, today, we can afford you to pay as you grow. So that's in a nutshell. Happy to share more as we go along, but that's, if you have any more information, we'll share the deck and happy to provide a live demo. We also have some Polish-speaking people. We have an office in Poland, so we can do it in your own language. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gil. That was quick and efficient. So yes, we'll be more than happy to facilitate contact with Open Legacy and their Polish team. Zivko and Pageland, 6 minutes.
Very well. Hi everyone, my name is Zivko and I'm the CEO of Pageland, which specializes in frictionless mobile banking and payments fraud prevention. I guess, we've all been talking about the growth in fintech, and it's quite clear that fintech has dramatically disrupted the financial services with the way we buy, pay, transfer money, all going mobile, cashless and cardless. And this is quite amazing because this is not a regional trend, but it actually happens all over the world. So no doubt that that's going to be the mainstream. And this also poses clearly a threat to the incumbent banks because the fintech products provide a much better user's experience. But with the user's experience and this growth also comes risk. And the risk is on the rise. And this is something that we're seeing quite a lot on a daily basis. We tackle more and more new threats and new MOs. And it's very different from the types of fraud that we used to tackle in the past for the incumbent banks, where it was mainly malware and Trojans on the online banking. With mobile, it's a completely different story. And since this is a new channel, then we see, of course, new types of attacks and mainly new account fraud, synthetic identity fraud, because fraudsters find their ways into the application and they fly under the radar of the legacy security solutions. And since these solutions were not designed for this new channel, they have too many breaches and flows within the processes. And this is, of course, part of the reason why more and more neobanks, e-wallets, challenger banks, and digital banks in general lose money. And of course, this is one of their main concerns. So in addition to tackling fraud, we need to balance between, of course, ensuring that we don't lose money to fraud attacks, but at the same time, we keep the same user's experience and we reduce the friction because that's the whole point behind fintech. And that's exactly what we did at Pageland. We designed and developed a solution which fits perfectly to this market that balances between these two business needs. One is to ensure that regardless of which fraud is actually launched against the bank or the wallet and the application remains protected, whether that's new account fraud, account takeover, transaction fraud, card fraud, synthetic identity fraud, and it goes on and on. Then enabling a truly frictionless experience that eliminates, in the majority of the cases, the need for PIN codes and passwords and SMSs and OTPs. So it fully complies with the regulation of two factors, something you have, something you are, but at the same time, it is provided in a seamless manner that enhances the user's experience. And this is all done in a very, very simple manner. And let's look at how it works. This is actually an anti-fraud in a box. Here is the app, link the app to the box and get it all out of the box automatically. Because the times where legacy systems needs to be, need to be implemented, and then lots of data needs to be collected, models need to be trained, and so on and so forth, this takes a very long time. And this has nothing to do with today's, fintech services. So what's in the box is 6 intelligence sets that take into account all the aspects that are required to distinguishing between a legitimate customer and a fraudster. So we leave nothing behind. We actually combine the device, the user, and the transaction, where we create a unique signature for each phone from the first moment it connects, so that fraudsters trying to use emulators and bots and machines and reset the phone to factory default and all kinds of tricks to make it look like it's a new device. Every time they target a new victim, it fails against the device DNA. Then the analysis of the environment, we can immediately, regardless who the user is, we can assess the environment and realize whether the phone is currently in the hands of a fraudster or in use by a legitimate person. And this raises or decreases the risk accordingly. All the analysis about how we behave when we use the application, because we behave in a certain way. We visit certain screens. We stay some time on each and every one of these screens. Our flow is unique to us. So when we use the app, we know that it's actually us. When somebody else tries to take over our account, this fraudster would never know how we behave. And of course, there is a clear deviation and a mismatch. Same with the biomarkers. How do we hold our phone with the left hand or right hand, and whether our scroll is human or the touch is machine-based? So all the biometrics is ingested into the system. And of course, our spending habits, that is, who do we transfer to, what is the amount, the time, the location, the payee, the merchant, all that is taken into account, so that when we connect the dots, we can very accurately distinguish between legitimate customers currently operating inside the application, trying to legitimately send money, pay, transfer, and of course, fraudsters taking over our accounts, using stolen cards, and all other attempts to commit fraud. And this is stopped and blocked before the transaction even occurs. So more and more banks today, e-wallets and mobile payment companies are subscribing to the service due to its simplicity and very high effectiveness. Thank you.
Thank you, Ziv. So this is the last company from the pitching session. We can move to our second panel. Before the panel, I would like to run a short poll. Here you will have names of the companies that presented the solution. And if you would like to meet one of them, please vote and we'll be more than happy to connect. This will be like for 1.5 minutes. If not, anyway, I will be more than happy to share all the informations. One thing, being so excited to host you here, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Katarzyna Dzit, not Israel Europe Economic Mission. I'm the director here at the Third Economy Mission at the Israeli Embassy. I'm dealing with Fintech, cybersecurity technologies. So if you have any questions, requests, suggestions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. I will put my email address on chat for everyone, and then of course you will receive from my email the presentations and the link to the video. Our second panel that we start, yes, exactly 15 minutes later. It's drivers for success in the implementation of the fintech innovations. Government, the business community, and the regulatory cooperation. Our guests now are Wojciech Pankowski, VP of KIR, Wojciech
Good morning.
VP of Polish Banking Association.
Hello.
Tal Sharon, CEO, President of Fintech Aviv. And Ilanit Madmoni from Bank of Israel, Head of Innovation. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm thinking when maybe I will start with Kir. The question is, the Kir is a key entity of Polish payment system infrastructure, which renders complex clearing services and provides the top quality solutions, of course, that meeting the needs and expectations of banking and payment sectors. It actively works towards using innovative technologies, extending the offer also to the banks and other agents of the industry. So in your opinion, Mr. Pankowski, how accepting and managing payments has changed in Poland during recent years? But also, how do you see the future of payments from the point of view of the entity that deals with the infrastructure?
Hello again, everybody. Thank you very much for the invitation and the participation. First of all, I would like to thanks for this shorter presentation and pitch that are very interesting and inspiring, and I hope we can also have the access to the presentation to look at in some more time, because it's only a few minutes, so it's sometimes it's difficult to manage this and think about such interesting things. So thanks a lot. And answering your question is quite long, but I will try to do my best just to give you the short overview. Also, when we could see the first part and the first panel when Mr. Adam Tochmański presented our system, it's innovative. It's based on the mobile payments, electronic payments. So last 30 years, when we implemented quite online instant payment, because we have the currently 3 sessions per day in the settlement. So it's not online in full, but let's say this is the quite online. We have also the possibility to do the instant payment or using our Express Elixir, which is the instant payment. Also, Blik, this new payment, mobile payment system presented by Mr. Mazurkiewicz, is also using the Express Elixir P2P payments, which is instant payment. When I see in the last years, I can see the tremendous growth in the mobile users. For sure, Mr. Kicinski will say more about it, but we have close to 10 million of mobile-only users. So we have the 20 million active user of electronic banking, internet electronic banking, from which 10, so 50% is the mobile-only users. So I can see that the speed of the transfers and the implementation of the instant payment is very important. And what is important with this is also the security and cyber security, the fraud prevention, because when you are speeding the process of processing of the money transfers from the, let's say, quasi online to the instant, you must have the possibility to do a very quick the security checking, the fraud protection, and all these things which can prevent you from some kind of the frauds. So we implemented, as you also heard, the mobile payment system called Blik, which is used by a few millions of people in Poland, which is quite interesting, especially in commerce. We have many years the pay by link, which is the e-commerce transactions based on the instant payments. So this is like a realization of the PSD2 we implemented many years ago. When we look forward, I can see that the growth of this instant payment will be speeding up. We can also see the increase of the P2P or payments. So based on the mobile payment, this is especially for the younger people, but also for the small enterprises. It's very useful and fast transfer. I can see the usage which will increase based on the open banking, so PSD2 directive. We are starting, let's say, but we can see on the market this open banking solution based on ICE and PIS, so the payment initiative. It's very interesting. Also, what is visible is some kind of that embedded payment. So like putting your card or wallet to some services where the payment is not visible in the fact when you are paying for the Uber, but also for the subscription on the recurring payments. We see that this increase of embedded payment is quite significant, and I think that this is the future. Then the payment, in fact, will be not visible, will be the part of the transaction, will be the part of the service of buying, but itself it will be not a special action needed to do this payment. And also what we see is we can call the biometric or payment. So your eyes or finger or some kind of your body and others just to do the payment without any tool like card or plastic or even a smartphone. So you use yourself to do the payment, and these few directions I can see as a future, and we can probably discuss about more now or in the future. Thanks.
Thank you. I wonder, Mr. Kiciński, because in theory now I wanted to ask you a question now, but I think I would like to move to Tal first, just to keep the ratio of Polish and the Israeli speakers. And also because for the last two questions, I would like to keep the banks, like the Polish Banking Association and Bank of Israel. Because we already talked about payment systems in general, as a technology, as backend, which country can offer what solution, how was the process. But recently, there has been a shift to more consumer-oriented services, and therefore more consumer-oriented definition. And fintech now includes different sectors and industries, such as education, retail banking, fundraising, non-profit, tourism, investment management, just to name a few. So I would like to ask Tal, what is an Israeli answer to this expanding potential of the fintech arena? How the famous Israeli startup ecosystem responded to the growing needs of the market? Because I understand that what Poland can offer to be as an example of is the whole system and building of it. But I think that we are lacking a little bit of small fintech innovation, as in Poland. Fintechs are rather banks. It's quite opposite as in Israel, as I presume. You have to turn on your microphone. We can't hear you.
Sorry, yeah. So I'm not sure you're leveling the field because a lot of the Polish entities we're working with say are more Polish than Israeli already, but I'll do my best. I want to take the notion that you suggested and look at it from a different perspective. Innovation in the past several years has been focused mainly on retail. That is basically because the commercial banks are looking at retail customers and want to provide them with services and solution to better customer service, just enrich their client base and etc. And in the past, I'd say 2-3 years, we see more and more focus on corporate banking. Basically, the same person who enjoys retail banking can be a CFO in a corporate, and then he said, why do I not get the same value, the same experience that I get in the retail banking in the corporate realm? And I think this is where the regulators should fit in, because corporate banking is not solely for revenue generation. It is a market maker. It can produce a lot more engagement between different markets if we're talking about global transactions. A great example of that is we had Hal from Tenorix. So Tenorix is a wonderful solution, not only for a specific financial institution, but also for a regulator to implement widely, reduce the risk for all global transactions, and becoming more engaged in the market in allowing more transaction in a safer way, in a way that is, let's say, cost adverse. So I'm not really fully sure that that retail should be the main focus. I really see a lot of interest in corporate banking, both in, we have this Fintech Academy programs we're doing with financial institutions. And we see that a lot of the processes that are being internally produced by the employees are for corporate banking, because this is what, the main challenge is. So it doesn't seem to be glamorous from the outside, and maybe that's one of the reasons why not as many startups are focusing on that realm. But it is there's a dire need for these types of solutions. So this is my 2 cents on corporate versus retail, and how the regulator can really move the needle. And we have Ilanit here to show what we're doing in Israel. So maybe Ilanit, you can share your point of view in that.
Thank you. Thank you, Tal. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, by the way, because you always take my question, deconstruct it, and give totally a different answer than I expected. So this is what makes the conversation really interesting. Before Ilanit, because she will answer not only her question, but I hope also a question that was asked to Oded, I would like to ask the Vice President of Polish Banking Association, Mr. Włodzimierz Kiciński. Thank you for joining us. So there are few sectors that can claim to have changed as dramatically in the last few years as the payment sector. Not many of them. Banks, financial market infrastructure, and other payment institutions face the challenge not only responding to the regulatory developments and demands that Tal mentioned, but also innovating in a legally compliant manner. So the question is, how do you see how banks could be competition to the startups, thousands of startups emerging from like almost nowhere and taking over areas of payment ecosystem that till now traditionally belonged to the banking institutions? What do you see as the biggest threat to the banks in general?
Well, thank you very much for introducing these issues. I think that first of all, it would be needed to inform what is the Polish banking sector. The Polish banking sector, there are more than 60 commercial banks and over 530 cooperative banks, which is quite huge number of financial institutions, and we cooperate also with the other representatives from the financial sector. From this point of view, the situation is also different in particular groups of banks. And commercial banks are very modern, very innovative, and let's say very competitive. That is the general characteristic also for the Polish banking sector. Cooperative banks are a little bit behind of this group of banks I mentioned before. And they introduce now very modern solutions also in their groups, because they are grouped in two organizations. But this is what we think about the Polish banking sector generally, is that it's very modern and one of the most innovative sectors in Europe. Because of this, that we invested into the modern solutions money before today, I would say. And from this point of view, PSD2, as was introduced, that was nothing very special for Polish banks. It would be rather the reaction that many Western European banks were unable to conduct business in the proper way. That means so quick as possible and so reliable as possible and needed. We also developed very special rules for cooperation with other partners in the financial sector. And I mean about the Polish Open API, which was the project developed together by banks, by financial institutions, third parties included, of course, with many academics and lawyers. That was very special solution, showing first of all that security of the customer data is the key point for all changes which are needed in the payments sector. And we think that data of the customer is still the key element and key value for all financial institutions. There are quite many consequences of such an approach. And we still think that the credentials given to the third parties, it could be quite risky business for our customers. Because we have so inefficient control over the activity of payments institutions in Europe, allowing, for example, to establish such a financial institution and payments institution in small countries, and after a few months, the company belongs to another company. And this is the company not from European Union, it's the company from Russia, China, or whatever that would be. And then the data of our customers would land not in the proper way and not in the proper hands of financial institutions. Because of this, we think that the Polish standard, the Polish API system is the good solution, respecting, first of all, security of data protection of our customers. But we are open also for the cooperation with financial companies and those which are involved in the payments business. because we think that's needed. That would bring additional innovation to the Polish banking system, and that would bring also additional possibilities for our customers. Having this in mind, we believe that all these banks and financial institutions should be controlled on the same way. And the same rules, the same conditions for all participants who are active in the payment system. That means that, for example, AML, anti-money laundering, should be reflected in the policies of payments institutions, as well as in the activity of the banks, which is not the case now according to rules we have in the European Union, because the banks are just responsible for the protection of the customer data and should identify all units participating in the payments transaction, which is not the obligation of the financial institution. From this point of view, we think that the competition is very good. The competition is for everybody and should be reflected in the regulation addressed to banks and also to other firms participating in the payment system. And this is the answer for your question, that we don't believe it is something which is very dangerous for the banking sector. It is rather the challenge we should face, we should answer, we should formulate the answer, and we should offer the facilities to our customers. But the same rules should be reflected in the regulation for TPPs, which are not fully involved into the regulation we are facing now, and the banks are then in not such a very good position. We are over-regulated. We think that this regulation, which is in the payments area, is unequal for all participants, and we ask for the same rules, the same conditions in order to compete and in order to have the best solutions for our customers.
Thank you very much. Ending here and starting with Ilanit Madmoni, thank you for being with us. I just don't want to give too long forward, so I will ask this quick question. What is the biggest headache of head of innovation of Bank of Israel? What are your challenges? Because you're both bank, fintech, regulator. So altogether you have all those prerogatives and challenges that few institutions are having in Poland, and you have them all together. So what is your biggest headache?
First of all, thank you for inviting me for this very interesting panel. Maybe to make it more clear, the Bank of Israel is regulating the banks and the credit card companies, and as Oded said, also the payment system schemes. But the fintechs are not regulated by the Bank of Israel. Maybe this is one of the challenges for the regulators in Israel, since we have three different regulators in Israel. One is the Bank of Israel, the other one is the Security Authority, and Capital Market Authority. And all the three are regulating different financial institution, and sometimes there is an overlap between the institution. So this is one of the challenges in the new world, in the new financial world, that we need to collaborate more, and it's not, the boundaries are not so clear sometimes. And if we want to make a collaboration between a bank and a fintech, there is a need to see the all risks of the ecosystem, and there are new risks. And on one end, we want to enable innovation and bring innovation, and on the other end, we're still responsible for the stability of banks and the financial bodies. It's not an headache, but we have a lot of challenges to set the right infrastructure for payment and open banking, and open banking not only for the data but also for payment initiation. And we want to remove barriers for new players and new banks, and we need to think how we regulate new players in the market, small players, but and big players, and it's a lot of challenges, and but it's really interesting to learn the new word and the new innovation, and to bring it to the market. It's very I'm very glad that I'm in my job to do this and to bring the innovation to the Israeli market.
Thank you. A quick question. Maybe you can answer what was asked to the question that was asked to Oded.
About the CBDC.
Yes, yes, briefly.
Yeah. It should be briefly, because to speak about the CBDC, it can take 2 hours. I can tell that on our website, we have a document for the public about the intention of the Bank of Israel regarding CBDC. The Bank of Israel has been learning this issue, and now it decided to accelerate this learning and to check what can we do. It doesn't say that we are going to issue digital currency, but we are learning this subject, and we would like to check who will issue the currency and how to provide the currency to the public. There is a very long document in our website, and I think it's good to read. And if there are any question, you can submit this question to me, and I will make sure that the right people will answer specific questions.
Sure, and I'll be more than happy to connect you with the people who would like to ask the question. Just not to cut in the middle of the discussion, if Mr. Pankowski, Mr. Kicinski, and Mr. Sharon would like to add to wrap up the discussion. If not, we are going to finish our webinar.
Maybe I can add and support the thesis that for last year we focused mainly on the retail banking and retail customers. What is interesting now, it's the access to the corporate customers and small enterprises as well, and mainly the retail, but some of the additional topics are connected with such a kinds of the customers. And the second, my topic is that national clearing house is not only the payment or settlement and clearing, but we're also very involved in the electronic signature, proving of identity, or for instance, AML or KYC. So we are trying to build some kind of technological hub which support from one point of view the banks and the financial sector, but we are looking also at the other sectors with the electronic signature, with the proving of the identity in in the situation when the customer is not available or physically, and we want to prove the identity based on the internet banking, for instance. So we are trying to build some kind of the ecosystem, electronic and technological, to support, to digitalize the processes using the experience from the banks. But as you heard, the banks are very innovative in the approach, especially part of them that are very innovative in the implementation, not only the model of payment, but some other things like a paperless or solution, cashless or solution. And we are trying to transfer this know-how and this experience to other sectors to help them to support in the implementation. And we are cooperating with some fintechs and especially with the supervision authority, because the situation is quite similar, as you mentioned, that the supervision authority is separated from the National Bank of Poland. And this supervision is responsible for the cooperation with the fintechs, with TPP, and created the innovation hub, which is quite interesting to support these fintechs. And we are the part of this ecosystem to also discuss with some fintechs, with some startups. We implemented sandbox or blockchain, which is quite unique in the Europe and the only one in the Poland. So if somebody is interested in the checking some ideas using the blockchain, it is free of charge. So for the startups or fintechs, but also the old firms, let's say.
Yes, we will make the webinar together with you.
And we are open to not only for the Polish companies, but also the others to use this blockchain or sandbox blockchain to test, to do some hypotheses and test them.
So I can see huge potential for cooperation, both with banks, Israeli banks, Fintech Aviv. Yes.
Maybe one sentence or 3 sentences from my side. I think that we are focusing on the payments area, looking at the innovations there. But today, the Polish banks are looking very dynamically at a new perspective, which is sustainable economy and green economy. And I think that especially for fintechs, there is the huge area of potential business, how to use the knowledge and innovations already developed in the payments area, and how to address this to green economy, because environment, social issues, and also governance in terms of collecting data, preparing the right mechanisms. It is the huge potential to operate and also to prepare very modern solutions for banks, but generally for all participants in the economic life. Thank you.
This is actually a point that is widely discussed in Europe. We had an entire panel about this topic, about ESG and how it's impacting the industry in our annual summit, and you know, how to create carbon neutral companies. So there's a lot of actually companies who focus on ESG. This wasn't the topic for today, but I'll be more than happy to connect and see like which solutions can fit the Polish industry. But definitely the correlation of fintech and ESG has a lot of potential to it, and we see more and more companies focusing on that realm. identifying the investor needs, allocating the resources required for a carbon neutral society. So it is something that's on the rise. Just wanted to say maybe thank you, and this was a lovely session and event, and I'll be more than happy to continue the discussion with anyone who has interest in the Israeli ecosystem, either to connect to financial institutions or startups, either just to brainstorm on different solutions or innovation. So thank you very much, Kate and the Economic Mission for setting this up.
Thanks a lot, Tal, for being our partner for this. And thank
Always,
you,
yeah.
And thank you to all our Polish partners as well. I thanked you in the beginning, and I thank you once again for this amazing cooperation, for your attendance, for your taking part of the panels and leading these really interesting discussions. Thank you also to the Bank of Israel, to Ilanit, to Oded. Really glad to have you here, and to all the attendees who were part of this webinar so far. Thank you so much. Kate, thank you so much for the great moderation as well, as always, basically.
Thank you very much, and my apologies for not muting myself. Was sure that one of the panelists is in danger, so picked up the phone. Thank you again. It was pleasure to host you here, to listen to the presentations, to lead the discussion. I hope we will see each other soon in person.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.